Well, welcome to episode number 9 of Superpower Logic Podcast. It's Kelly and Richard. We're back. Today is Wednesday, August 12th, right?
Yeah, where's the
Yeah,
summer going?
12th. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. Summer's flying and I'm forgetting the days. Yeah, where is the summer going, right? Um,
It's because you're in Canada. You're all
yes,
confused.
folks, I am back in Canada and we're trying to make the Wi-Fi work up here. Yes, I'm back in the Great North. I have not indulged in any poutine though, so maybe we can do a poutine tasting live one time.
I'm down for that.
Yeah. So we're back. Richard and I are excited to talk about another some more interesting news, especially coming out of Air Force One this week. Right, a lot happening. We've got some questionable polling out of Wisconsin, right? And as it turns out to be completely incorrect. We got a bunch of things going on this week, but one of the things we're going to dive into first, and we'll let Richard say hi, and then we'll dive into it. Sure, y'all have been hearing a lot about President Trump's great escape on the snack cart out of Turkey. So it just you can't make this stuff up. But behind all of that, there's obviously a legitimate threat. So, Richard, you've shared with us in the past some information about Air Force One. We've spoken about this Qatari plane. What are your thoughts about it?
So, uh, thank you for the intro. And where's the summer gone? Is time's flying by for me this summer, and I'm ready for some fall weather and football and all the good things that go along with that. Um, yeah, this Air Force One thing is a real life Tom Clancy novel in many ways. I'm sure that the Secret Service and the U.S. Air Force have done some creative things in the past with other presidents. I would imagine this would be at the top of the list. Just to kind of give a
But can
brief,
I jump in really quick
yeah,
to
of course,
ask a question? We probably don't hear about most of those incidents, so right?
yes,
Okay.
fortunately. So I'm just going
Yeah.
to quick show you a little, uh, show everyone a little timeline of exactly what happened with the president. So as you can see here, in Ankara, Turkey. So it 2022 for those of us in aviation and the military, 8:22 p.m. Uh, the president boarded the old version, as you see here. That's the VC-25A. The VC-25 is the technical uh, uh, designation for what is traditionally referred to as Air Force One. But Air Force One is any U.S. Air Force airplane that the president is on.
Okay.
So he boards this aircraft, and then at 8:30, he gets off in this little catering truck and moves over to what we refer to as a C-32, which is this guy right here, which is a VIP 757 that the Air Force flies. Some of their C-32s are painted white, and some of them are painted in the scheme you see here, which is this white and blue livery. The
Oh, when you
president,
say VIP, it, what what would make it a VIP? Just
so
curious.
it's commonly used by the high-level cabinet secretaries, defense,
Oh, okay.
treasury, State Department, the vice president. The president will fly it. For example, if President Trump is going to New Jersey to Bedminster for the weekend,
Hmm.
he would more than likely take the C-32. It can operate in airports with shorter runways than the 747 version, the VC-25.
Okay.
So, uh, so they take off from Turkey. But what is of note here is that the 747 retains the Air Force One call sign, even though the president is not on board. The C-32 uses a call sign called Reach 18. Reach is a common call sign the U.S. Air Force uses for missions across the Atlantic. Uh, and so uh, they fly to a Royal Air Force base, RAF Mildenhall, which is a huge U.S. Air Force presence there.
Which was
And
not a planned stop, right?
it was a planned stop.
Oh, it
So
was. Oh,
they
okay.
stopped there for gas. The president flew to Turkey on the new Qatari gifted 747. When he flew out, obviously, uh, on the C-32. There was threats against the president, which is why they did not want to use the Qatari gifted 747 to fly him out. They were going to use the older VC-25A. So the president, they land in RAF Mildenhall, and of note here um, that the C-32 call sign Reach 18, it landed before the Air Force One, which was the VC-25 without the president on board. So obviously they're uh, hiding all of this from air traffic control. Of note, Secretary Bessent and Secretary Rubio were on the 747, the VC-25,
With the
uh,
press pool, right?
with the
Yeah,
press pool. Secretary Hegseth and the president, they were on the C-32, call sign Reach 18. So
interesting.
they got to England, and the president proceeded to exit the C-32 and get on the VC-25A, which had the press pool on it,
The
uh,
nor uh
the normal
old
Air Force,
school,
the old
the Air
school Air
Force
Force One.
One. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And then he disembarked from that aircraft and got on the Qatari gifted 747 to fly back to the United States. So you see here at uh, at 11:01, he boards the it's called the B model, the VC-25B or bridge aircraft, and then he goes back to the press gaggle on the airplane and talks to him for 15 or 20 minutes after they take off from Mildenhall on their way back to Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland.
And they were all none the wiser at that point, right?
At that point, yes, they were none the wiser.
Yeah.
It's important to note that in Turkey, the press pool on the VC-25A was told to close their blinds uh, so that they could not see, which is not uncommon. The Secret Service, it's no different than you have to follow what they tell you to do. No different than being on a commercial aircraft. You have to comply with the instructions of the air crew. So when they tell you to close those blinds, you're going to do it. And of course, that was when the president was uh, getting into the food service vehicle and making his way over to the C-32.
There's photographs. I don't mean to laugh because it's very serious if he was under threat, but the photographs of the in the little video I've seen of the snack cart just zinging along behind, like, but that's completely normal, right? A beverage cart. I
Sure.
mean,
I mean,
if do you
yeah, I
think
mean,
those plans are made in advance or do they game that out?
well, I mean, it's not like, so the stewards, we call them stews in the Air Force on these VIP aircraft, including Air Force One, they do the shopping for these trips. And obviously there's security concerns and safety concerns. You don't
Yep.
just let any caterer put air food on an aircraft that the president's flying on. I probably would have looked twice if I was at the airport with
You,
a catering truck pulled up
yeah,
next to the VC-25A. Uh, but nonetheless, obviously this was a serious threat to do this. There's reporting from CBS, Axios, all stating that it was a credible MANPAD threat. MANPAD is MANPAD, stands for Man Portable Air Defense. So some type of shoulder fired surface to air missile system, that there was counts of people being observed um, in Ankara with these systems. And so very credible threat. Uh, the C-32A is a very capable aircraft that transports the president on a regular basis. But Air Force One is a very is the safest mode of transit for the president. It has a lot of countermeasure systems, defensive systems to protect the aircraft, particularly in its takeoff and landing environments where it's most vulnerable. So it's interesting to me that they did this, put him on a somewhat less capable aircraft from a defensive countermeasure standpoint, and um, went through with this whole operation. It was an
It was,
Iranian backed
yeah.
operation, at least it's believed to have been, and obviously very very scary. So
And they were at a NATO meeting, right? This is
it was
a
the NATO
meeting
summit.
of this strong. So, this is the world's most powerful military alliance as well, with a bunch of foreign leaders. So I know we may not have this information, but one of the things that keeps running through my mind is there's obviously a vulnerability. President Trump was vulnerable. Um, we were in a NATO, we were in a NATO country, Turkey. Um, there's different degrees of NATO countries or different, Turkey. One might say that Turkey, I'm trying to think how I would put it, but maybe it's a different NATO country versus like the UK or Canada, right? That the threat may be, threat level may be different. Maybe it's also geographically, but there's a vulnerability, and we may never know this, but um, is that kind of on Turkey to not allow an Iranian threat close enough?
Oh, well, I mean, I have no doubt that there's good security cooperation for the
Yeah,
with Turkey hosting the NATO summit, and they certainly don't want anything bad to happen.
yeah,
At the most pragmatic level, they don't want anything to bad to happen on their territory.
yeah.
Um,
But
but
geographically, they are just closer
certainly,
too.
and there were concerns before the summit about it being in Turkey with its obvious close proximity to Iran, and uh, in the defense circles that I run in, there was concern that President Trump was going to fly the bridge version of the VC-25 to Turkey. Um,
The Qatari plane.
yes, the Qatari
Yeah,
plane. So because the Qatari plane does it lacks all the visually obvious on the outside countermeasure systems that the VC-25As have. And
yeah.
so you don't have to be um, Jane's Defense uh, or Justin Bronk to he's an aviation military
Oh,
analyst in England. He's one of the smartest guys in the world on military aviation and defense. Uh, what's going on in the defense world? You don't have to be those people to see compare the two and see the Qatari aircraft does not have these systems,
yeah,
and those systems are just another added layer of defense. There's obviously other things that the aircraft employs and tactics, techniques, procedures they use to ensure the president gets from A to B safely. Um, what's of real concern to me, um, along with the obvious, which was the threat itself, is that it got leaked. Um,
yeah.
and that really you're talking a fairly small amount of people when uh, what's being reported is that Secretary Bessent and Secretary Rubio were aware the president was not on board.
Okay, they were.
So most most of the Air Force One crew, certainly the pilots, everyone up on the flight deck was aware of that. Um, some of the comms people that are on the aircraft that ensure basically in simplistic terms that run the switchboard for the airplane,
Okay.
make sure
Oh,
everybody can talk to everybody.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
some of them might have known. I'm sure some of the stews might have known. um, Obviously the Secret Service, so it's a small amount of people, probably less than 100 that were aware of this, between staffers, principals, Air Force and Secret Service.
Would
And
anyone in the UK have known at Mendenhall?
at Mildenhall, no, I don't think
Mildenhall.
anybody would
Okay.
have known. That would have been again. They maintained the routes all the way across Europe, calling the VC-25A Air Force One.
Yeah.
Um, and
Nobody
this
could
is
have
not,
seen him
yeah,
moving.
yeah.
At
They're
Min-
flying at night. President
okay.
Bush notably went to Iraq for, I believe it was Thanksgiving in 2004 or five,
Yeah.
um, and surprised the troops. But he actually flew the VC-25, and they did not use the Air Force One call sign. And there's a excellent documentary about it with President Bush's W. Bush's pilot, and where another commercial aircraft, as the sun's coming up, they're flying over Europe, and somebody says that looks like Air Force One, and they're
Wow.
they're at cruise altitude, and
Yeah.
another commercial aircraft saw them, so they almost had their cover blown. So it's not without precedent that you know these types of tactics have been used in the past. There was one with President Clinton going to Pakistan, I believe it was, where uh, they did some special things. And obviously, the number one thing for the Air Force and the Secret Service in these situations is to protect the president and get the president to where he needs to go safely and securely. Um, there's a little bit of controversy with the journalists and
The
the
White
political
House.
class in DC. But
Yes.
I would argue that if you're going to get on Air Force One, or if you're going to go to work at the White House every day, you have an understanding already of the security nature of Air Force One or the White House, and that unfortunately they are targets. Uh,
Is
if you walk
is
into the
the
White House, you're aware it's well
yeah.
protected.
Yeah. And you're flying you get when you're flying around the free world with the president of the United States, it doesn't matter who they are. You're you could be a target at, a, a, if you're near and around him all the time. Now, it's interesting, or maybe it's not interesting. I guess I'd like to hear your opinion that Secretary Hegseth went with President Trump, and Secretaries Rubio and Bessent stayed but knew. Is there would there be a reason for that, or was the threat that credible that they wanted that?
Well, I mean, I think part of it. That's a really good question. If you Since the press corps did not know that the president wasn't on the aircraft, I don't
Uh,
see how having Rubio and Besson on the plane contributes to the uh, the rouge, if you will.
yeah,
Um, so again, I think there's probably a few more layers of this story to get peeled back, and they'll come out over time. Um, I hope that they do an aggressive uh, look into this leak because it is concerning. These types of operations are, one would think and one would hope that there's a lot of contingency plans and that these operations are obviously very highly classified as far how they decide to implement one of these plans and then execute it. So the fact that it leaked, it concerns me.
and now I've seen reporting suggesting that the Iranian IRGC knew what floor and room President Trump was staying at too at the meeting. Is that have you has that been confirmed? Have you heard that or?
I've seen the same reporting, and when it comes to things like this, I kind of give them like 72 hours because
Mm,
I forget who reported that. I think it was CBS, but there's some outlets like the Atlantic story about Patriot missile production. And I give it like 72 hours
mm,
because you have to, uh, obviously my bias towards the corporate media and
yeah,
their motivations. So I take it with a grain of salt. If they did know what floor he was on, had some idea of where he was on the floor, yeah, you don't have to be a Secret Service agent to figure out that's a problem.
yeah. But now, how would we know that? One of the Iranians would have had to say,
Knows? I
"Oh,
mean,
We know, right? So yeah, to
Yeah,
your point taken.
there's so many avenues for good Lord. I mean, just think about how much Mossad has figured out against the Iranians. I wouldn't be surprised if we got it from them.
Yeah, that's true. Right, because of or what percentage of IRGC is actually undercover Mossad, right?
It's enough
It's
that if you were in the IRGC, you'd be concerned, I would
yeah,
think. So
like that for years they had this is what I've heard for IRGC set up a unit to root out all undercover Mossad, and the guy that ran it was Mossad undercover.
yeah, yeah, I think it was like a 12 people, the council, and
Yeah,
11 of them were
for
Mossad double
yeah,
agents, and the leader was too. Like, yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty bad.
just interesting. So I obviously we've been seeing the press react, right? A lot of chatter from them about um, just what have you made of their reaction and their
I
response, and are they is there accurate reporting when this happens? This wouldn't have been the first time, right? Other presidents have decoyed and used it. Um, is this getting so much attention because the press themselves were part of it and dwelling on it?
Well, I think there's a sensational aspect to this story. Uh, the late great author Tom Clancy, who wrote The Hunt for Red October, and uh, that was his first big book. Became obviously a wonderful movie. Uh, there's some sensationalism to it that fuels this story. Um, but yes, I believe the press. This is the sanctimonious side to them and how they view their role as uh, an exceptional career field, in my opinion. I do believe that they view themselves in a very ethical, um, important way as it relates to protecting the First Amendment and holding truth to power and whatever other catchphrases, the catchy phrases you want to use, which is obviously, I believe, a disconnect with how the majority of the American public on both sides of the aisle view the corporate media. Um,
They
and
see themselves maybe as more important than the
yes,
majority of Americans
yeah, I think
Americans do. And
there's,
if I mean, if I'm one of them, yeah, okay, I'm upset I'm being a decoy. But also, Secretaries Rubio and Bessent were decoys. There was plenty of other staff, right?
right. And you know what? That might have been part of it as well.
Oh, keeping
If
them.
if Besson or Rubio walked the press is in the back of the aircraft, but
Yeah,
if Besson or Rubio walk by or there's an open door and they see them talking,
yeah,
like, okay, they're on the airplane. I
yeah,
mean, if I was a member of the press sitting back there and I saw Besson or Rubio or both of them,
yeah,
I wouldn't think, oh, I wonder if the president's on the plane too. Like he got
yeah,
on the, so
yeah.
you would think it that, yeah.
And
And
especially
again,
Secretary of State, too.
yeah, I mean, Treasury and state are obviously
Yeah,
big deals, and so
yeah,
maybe that was just part of the ruse to keep the press from
yeah.
getting curious.
They were
Uh,
even more of a decoy than the press was.
yeah, well, I'd be curious how obviously there was a leak, but I wonder, did somebody leak it, or did somebody in the press approach someone
And figure,
and they were like, "Yeah, this is what happened." I wonder, is this the chicken or the egg kind of conversation? Because um, if it's somebody that just leaked, uh, that's
and,
both circumstances, both scenarios are concerning. Um, my guess is somebody leaked it, uh, and that's
and
no. There's
hopefully
another angle too. There's another angle too that if the Secret Service leaked it, if somebody in the service leaked it to get some positive press, like for the agency,
oh,
I wouldn't
okay.
rule that out.
Yeah.
Obviously, the service has had a lot of issues,
Yeah, I was gonna say
and
they would like some good press.
yeah, and so if this is again,
Yeah.
we're we're spitballing here.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
the Secret Service is a political agency in many ways,
That's
Um,
interesting. It
and
seems like it shouldn't be.
Well, it's very common for like the Secret Service when a new president comes in, whoever was in charge of the detail when that president was campaigning, oftentimes they become the head of the president's detail. Or in
Okay.
this case, uh, the gentleman who was in charge of Trump's detail, he runs the Secret Service, the agency as
Yeah.
a whole now. So
After there was a shakeup, though,
been a lot
at
of
Secret Service.
shakeups.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah, at Secret Service.
yeah, Sean Curran is the current director of the agency, but he was in Butler, Pennsylvania. He
Yeah.
was standing right next to the president. That famous picture with the American flag behind uh, Mr. Trump. That's Agent Curran standing right next to him, and now he's running the whole agency. So again, we're I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat here,
Yeah.
but
No, do secretaries Rubio, Besant, do they all have Secret Service details too, or
oh yeah,
no? Okay.
so Secretary Rubio has DSS, which is the Diplomatic Security Service.
Okay.
Uh, so he has that. Secretary Besson, Secret Service used to be in the Treasury Department.
Okay.
Treasury Secretary gets Secret Service protection.
Okay.
And then obviously Secretary has quite a security detail as well. Um,
Is his is his Secret Service or military?
it's military. It's not uniform military, but
Yeah.
it's
It's
part of the
Department of
War Department.
Defense.
Yeah, War
Yeah. Okay.
Department, Defense
War Department.
Department.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck to call them yet because it
I
hasn't
know.
officially changed, and
No.
I want to call it the
Neither.
War Department because I think that it should be called the War Department like it originally was. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it just sets the tone for the organization, right?
absolutely,
Yeah. For the
we did two really bad things in 1940. One bad thing, one good thing in 1947. Uh, the Department of the Air Force was created on September 18th, 1947, but
Wait,
they
I thought
also
that was a good thing.
that was the good thing. The
Yeah.
bad thing was they changed the War Department's name from the War Department to the Defense Department.
Why did they do that? Do you know?
Oh, I'm sure the Google has the answer.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
politics.
we talked about it in the 90s when I was on ROTC. I mean, we made jokes about why they ever changed it because War Department's a hell of a lot cooler than Defense Department.
Yeah. Yeah. Although maybe it was an attempt to scale back some of the, um, the growth of the, or to maintain some of the growth of that whole department, as we'd seen it really expand during World War II. Um, so overall, um, what do you think? Does this make Trump look vulnerable? Uh, America look vulnerable? Like, do you think this?
Well,
And given that it was Iran, or they're claiming it was Iran, right? That maybe I don't know if that's all been concerned or confirmed, excuse me. But I, is it if Iran is a threat that close? I mean, where else could they be a threat?
I think Iran's a threat. Uh, I would imagine Iran has credible threat patterns across Europe and the United States. Certainly, wherever American leadership is, they have as President Trump has said, he's number one on their hit list. They
Yeah,
advertise their hit lists. Their embassies across the world uh, posts make posts on social media that are threatening, and I would hope that our intelligence agencies and law enforcement take all of these things seriously. My final thought on this is that I was very concerned when the Qatari aircraft. It's one thing for them to give us the airplane. It's another thing for us to use it as a presidential transport vehicle, and it's clearly not. They retrofitted it and did a lot of things to it and put a nice paint job on
yeah.
it, all those things. Well, they put a paint job on it. I don't know if I call it nice, but uh, but
Sorry.
they have this airplane that um, that lacks a lot of these systems by the government's own admission. And
Yeah.
anybody with
Yeah.
somewhat of a trained eye can clearly see this. The president flew into Turkey on the bridge model aircraft from Qatar, but they wouldn't let him leave on that aircraft.
Yeah.
And they made up a silly story about they flew it to England and opened it up to military families to get a tour. Um, and that was why it left Turkey, which that wasn't the case at all. It left Turkey because it's not a viable option in a threat environment to transport the
Yeah.
president.
But
And
he didn't leave the NATO meeting early, Trump.
no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
I was seeing
So
some people say that's not
yeah,
true.
but and Trump's obviously not the first narcissist to sit in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
What what concerns me is that almost certainly the Air Force and the Secret Service objected to this aircraft being used to transport the president, and yet it still happened.
Yeah.
He flew that aircraft to North Dakota for Teddy Roosevelt's presidential library opening. He obviously flew it to Europe. He flew it to Turkey for the NATO summit. Um, and even if the president takes off from Andrews Air Force Base going to, you pick it, Texas
Yeah.
or Los Angeles, it doesn't matter. They use all these defensive systems. The
Yeah.
countermeasures are on. Um, and while certainly it's safer at a place like Andrews, or it should be safer, there's threats everywhere potentially. So they don't take chances. And the idea that the president could strong arm the
Yeah.
Presidential Pilot's Office, the 89th Airlift Wing at Andrews, and the U.S. Secret Service, if I was uh, if I was an adversary of America, that's an indication. Okay, they are willing to take shortcuts because this man uh,
His
clearly is
ego.
willing to take them. Yes.
Yeah.
I think President Trump wanted that damn aircraft to fly over the mall on the 4th of July, come hell or high water,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
he got it. And he
It
wanted
might
to
be
fly
his
on it.
own, his ego might be his own Achilles heel, right?
Possibly. Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly at all, but to your point, it's at a certain point, if a president isn't going to heed these warnings, and yes, I mean, maybe to be a president, you have to be a little narcissistic. We know Donald Trump is probably or is a narcissist in his own right. I don't know how you'd compare him to other presidents, but the guy's got an ego, and it clearly is drives a huge part of his personality in his life. But at a certain point, there's people around him too, right? And how much, yeah, to your point that you just said, what the message that it does send to the world, and should something happen, given how much he stoked tensions in Iran, in the Middle East, it seems like to me this is playing with fire a little bit. Maybe I'm overly maybe I'm exaggerating the disaster a little bit, but you go poke the bear, and then in Iran, Turkey's close, and then you want to fly on an aircraft that we know doesn't have the same security details, and then there's an incident. So I don't. To me, it seems a little bit reckless.
Well, it's not only that it's reckless, um, and what you said and what I said about a message to our adversaries, but also given what's happened to this man
Yeah,
and the attempts on his life and the lapses in security, whether it's in Butler or certainly the White House Correspondents' Dinner at the Washington Hilton. Um,
yeah. I mean,
that
in
that
Florida
the, I
golfing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make a counter argument that he could be like, well, I'm just going to do my own thing because you guys
Yeah,
haven't done that great. I'm
that's
joking.
true.
I'm joking, but but given the threat
And
environment against him, and I mean, obviously we don't have details, and but I'm sure it's a complex and robust challenge for the Secret Service that I'm sure the president has a lot of threats against him, unfortunately. Um,
these are
but
only
given
the
all that,
ones
I
we're
would want to
hearing
be
about.
in the I would want to be in the best airplane possible,
Yeah, yeah,
and that and I would not want to be in that Qatari aircraft. And I'm sure that I'm sure there have been some interesting conversations at Andrews and also between the Air Force and the Secret Service about this situation. And it's my understanding that the Qatari aircraft is going to go into depot maintenance to get upgrades here relatively soon. Um, I believe it goes down to Greenville, Texas, which is kind of where we do a lot of funny modifications for government aircraft. You'll see a lot of unmarked airplanes down there. I've been down there a couple times in my Air Force career, and that's where um, that's where it's going to go, I believe, and
Yeah.
get these upgrades done. And maybe it'll come out in a couple of years. And because the new Air Force ones, one is being they're very behind schedule. They were supposed to be
Yeah.
on the scene in 2024. I believe the first one is now scheduled for some time in 2028, and the second one in the summer of 29.
Okay.
So
Yes, maybe so. Yeah, he might not even see some of them. I want to follow up on something you said earlier about we were talking about NATO, allies and whatnot. Um, this shocked me. I really couldn't believe it. I read it. I read it now months ago when this whole incident started in Iran. But the United Kingdom did not consider the IRGC as a terrorist organization until July 13th of this year, under immense pressure from the US. They have withheld that. Europe, France, Europe, they're all, the IRGC is a terrorist organization. And it was not until this last July. And so when I mention, different type of allies, because I think one of the things we're seeing a lot from Besant, I actually think this is partially a move from Secretary Besant and Rubio, but the city of London has a lot of offshore banking. The United Kingdom, their GDP is like 80% service, and financial services is primarily one of them. We know they've shut down a lot of their like manufacturing and actual production, and financial services is a significant portion of that. And there's been a lot of it is offshore. And Secretary Besant has, as he's been squeezing all of these, like putting economic pressure on all the IRGC related activities, whether it be through Iraq, UAE, cutting off like their access to crypto, US stablecoin, sanctioning them, and really applying a lot of economic leverage in a way that we have never done before. Um, it was only this past July that the UK finally made the IRGC a terrorist organization. And I think to myself, um, how, you know, how uh, we have this larger conversation about our allies and whatnot. And we, Secretary Besant can do so much, but if our allies are enabling their funding, you know, it can only go so far. So the fact that Secretaries Rubio and Besant had to put so much pressure for them to finally rule the IRGC a terrorist organization um, is just incredible to me, and most people don't realize that.
I have to, yeah. I mean, I did not know that. I
Their
think it's
justification was, well, then they have an open dialogue, an open conversation with them.
that
But
sounds like a very British
yeah,
response.
but they've also had um, a rise in IRGC related threats. They have turned the other cheek to a lot of wild behavior in their own in their own country. But it's what I wish got talked about a little bit more with Iran is that this is an economic war as well that we are fighting. And Secretary Besant knows. I mean, the man, well, maybe the UK. He was part of the team that broke the Bank of England years ago when they shorted the pound. And I think Besant just knows every day he's posting more and more about we sanctioned this, we cut him off here, we did this, we did that. And it blows my mind. And so we think that's something public, right? That is a clear public thing. What is the relationship with behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, I don't think we can be naive to the possibility. Obviously, we have people in the media and in the chatter class, of which I suppose we are a part of,
Yeah.
um, that it's MAGA, Trump's a buffoon, yada yada yada. We've all heard this the message ad nauseum. All of this back and forth about when Trump talks about Iran negotiating and this, they're coming to the table and what Qatar and Pakistan are doing in mediation. Concurrently, you have Secretary Bessent doing everything he's doing, and what Treasury's doing, yielding a ton of economic power and leverage against Iran. And then you also have the War Department and what primarily the Army and the Air or the Navy and the Air Force are doing, which is the blockade. And that is all economic. And there are
Yeah.
a lot of rumors about the IRGC not getting paid. Um, Obviously, we know that Iran's economy, the inflation is rampant, and it's a struggle for the people. When you start pinching the leadership and cutting them off, um, it's a long game, right? But if you really believe in this mission, which I do, I still believe that Iran not having a nuclear weapon is is of the utmost national security is an utmost of national security interest to the United States. And quite frankly, far more of a national security threat if you're in Europe.
Hmm.
All these
Mm.
European nations, they should have been like, and in fairness to them, it's not like we told them either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
that's true. They didn't
you
have some
know,
warning.
goes both ways. But I'm also not sure I would have trusted them with that information that we're contemplating the strike.
Yeah.
But I do think that the economic leverage against Iran is something that and it's a big if we stay the course, it will eventually bear fruit. I
Yeah.
don't know if this administration, particularly President Trump, has the uh, intestinal fortitude to see this through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with the polls, right? And is that his ego?
You know, I do you, how much do you think that President Trump cares about the midterms?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of torn on that. Um, I'm not sure he cares that much because well, yes and no, because I think his legacy is important to him. Obviously, it is. And if there's some things he wants to get passed, right, would be it the SAVE Act or whatnot, um, he's going to need Congress, right? And if he doesn't get Congress and he can't pass some of this, is his legacy secured? So I don't think he actually cares that much about Congress, but as a tool, right? To help enact his legacy, I could see he does. I could see where he might be, but you make a great point. Like, how much does he really care about winning the midterms, anyways? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, um, I President Trump is obviously not a normal president when it comes to the politics of the party that he's a member of, that he leads. And I'm not sure that he thinks his legacy is going to be furthered by what Congress does or doesn't do, because he'll write that he'll write the story for his library and his legacy, and that might be enough for him. And legislatively, a huge part of that was the big beautiful bill
Yeah, yeah,
and the Trump accounts and how he's done that. I know he'd like to pass a Save Act. Obviously, I depending on which poll, the Save Act is incredibly popular with the American people, um, and um, but I think President Trump has pragmatically come to the realization that Congress is essentially useless
Mm.
95% of the time. And that yes, they got the big beautiful bill across, but to 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 strategize with House and Senate leadership and try to formulate policy ideas with their participation, I think Trump's largely abandoned that idea after the big beautiful bill passed. Yes, the Save Act is out there, but the fact that and it's not just Trump, Biden and Obama,
Yeah.
the executive order, the surge in executive orders over the last few administrations is proof to me and how impotent Congress is, and that the days of again having private meetings, having the Senate Majority Leader, the House Minority Leader, whatever it is in your party and leadership in both houses of Congress, coming to the White House and using the White House's home field advantage. We're going to have
Yeah.
lunch. We're going to have a dinner on a Wednesday night, a private, we'll have a drink like Reagan and Tip O'Neill used to do back in the day. I think modern presidents have largely abandoned that, and I
Yeah.
don't blame them.
Yeah. And but Congress, it's not like Congress has been fighting for the power and authority. They basically passed it off. They don't want, they just like the House, they're just permanently running for reelection, right?
Right.
And now with these campaigns, so Congress itself doesn't seem, too put out by it. But what we also have an executive branch that has grown and grown and grown, and the more administrative and bureaucracy that that part of the federal executive branch, right? Um, it's been encroaching on Congress's power for decades, and again, Congress doesn't seem to care, right? You have the like organizations like the EPA, right? The more the executive branch does, seems like the less Congress does, which is one of the things that one of the reasons that one of the things Trump said he was going to take on was there was that Supreme Court case where they overturned Chevron. That the problem with the executive branch doing this is these are unelected bureaucrats that are writing these regulations and controlling all of it. So you can't, like, we get Fauci, right? There's no way to vote Fauci out. We're just stuck with him. Um, and that is one thing that I wish Trump would be pushing for more, to continuing down that path of ripping apart, pulling back some of this administrative bureaucracy and the regulations. And some of it let happen at the state level, but some of it, it's just, you write bad legislation, right? Like Obamacare, right? There's so many holes with that. And then so it created a problem. Then you write more legislation or more rules to fix it, but you're just piling one bad layer on the next. And and it's one thing. He didn't like run so much on this, but it seemed to be a theme, and it's something I wish he would still continue to push for, like dismantling the Department of Education. I think is a good example. I'm not for getting rid of, a Department of Education, but push that back to the states. And to that extent, uh, Congress, in my opinion, if I were them, I'd be like, this is good. We want to support that because that means suddenly decisions, things are back in our hands. But I'm looking at Congress and everything that's going down, like between the executive branch and the legislative and judicial, and it's like maybe they're just so far gone right now. Like, what do we expect? Congress to suddenly start legislating because they have to vote, they have to cast votes and whatnot. And so, in a sense, I was hoping for a little more out of Trump to totally shake that up, right? Strip it back, peel it off, And I have not quite seen some of that. I know there was a little diversion there, but
No, I don't disagree in your assessment of the president. I was hoping he would do more in that regard as well. I think he probably approached the Doge effort wrong by using Elon so
yeah,
publicly.
yeah,
I feel like Elon is probably a weapon that's better kept. Elon is Elon is not the head coach of the football team.
no,
He should be in a dark room going over film and doing analytics and metrics and staying out of the limelight.
yeah,
Um, and also, uh, again, I think Trump was better prepared for his second term to navigate the DC landscape and avoid all the landmines that are in the inside the Beltway. That
yeah,
being said, um, if you really want to get things done, like for example, eliminate the Department of Education, you need Congress. I'm
yeah,
I'm as critical as anyone of Congress, and I'm
yeah.
I'm there's plenty of I'm on the record in many places, many occasions about my critique of Congress. But if Trump really had a
Like
a vision for
immigration.
that, well, yeah, and I mean,
I didn't mean
you
to cut
know,
you out there. I'm sorry.
oh no,
Sorry.
no, you're fine.
But Congress is needed, right? Like to
Yeah,
cut. Yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of these things are happening by executive order.
yeah.
Uh, if a Democrat walks into the White House in 2029,
They just right. Yeah.
yeah, it'll be gone in a matter of 20 minutes. So, um, I wish again, I supported the president primarily because of the southern border. That
Oh
was
yeah,
my biggest issue.
yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
and that got resolved very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And but
Or it
looking
got
back,
closed. It
it
got
got close. Yeah,
yeah. The
because
gates
he.
were closed.
But looking back, I wish that there was a little bit more of an ambitious agenda that would be impactful after he leaves the White House.
Yeah. Yes. And so in that sense, where when you say like with Congress, like I get him in that sense. I do wish he would take Congress more seriously because some of these things you're right, they require Congress, and at the same time going after the activism and the judiciary, right? It's and and I like the immigration reform, although I guess he never said we're gonna pass immigration legislation or whatnot, but he seemed to be positioned to be, he went in with a mandate to to make some of these changes. And while he is reducing like the staff level at the Department of Education, um, I'm wondering if he's going to be able to fulfill some of that larger, the real significant like cut, cutting whole chunks of administration and bureaucracy that just isn't needed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the ways you really downsize the federal government is it's so hard to have rifts, reductions in force, and it's certainly difficult to fire people for cause, or even to
Huh.
just to lay them off for budgetary concerns. It
Yeah.
takes time. What you don't do is backfill people, and
Okay.
you don't advertise. You don't create new positions. And again, we're talking. This is a long, long process, and the jobs numbers do reflect that. Do
Yeah, they
reflect what
do.
I just said to some extent.
Yeah.
And again, I think the president, I think his legacy, I think he cares about it. I don't think he factors enough the legislative aspects of his of how important that is for his legacy.
Yeah,
I would have made, again, Monday morning quarterbacking is obviously easy.
right. It's so easy for us to sit here and say all this.
Yeah, but can you imagine for a showman like Trump? Can you imagine if he would have made his case about Iran, got a coalition of nations together, and then marched up to Capitol Hill to a joint session of Congress and like
Yes.
and try to pull out his best FDR and get Congress to declare war
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say we're done with this. You could have had quite a campaign over everything Iran's pulled in the last 50 years. You could have really done a
Yeah.
number. And again, the president, I think we're all just kind of used to the fact that he's clumsy and and narcissistic, and he's going to talk way too much and tweet way too much, or Truth Social, whatever it is that he does. But
Yeah.
um,
And he was off that Venezuela high, right?
well, yeah, there's something to be said for that about how Venezuela went down, and it was not
Yeah.
without some risk, but it obviously it was executed very well. One one thing that one thing that I do find interesting still is an old saying that you can't get surprised when a cat licks its butt because that's what cats do. So
Yeah. That's true.
every time your cat licks its butt, and you go, "Oh my God,
Oh,
what are you
yeah.
doing? I can't
Oh,
believe you're licking your butt." It's like that's what
yeah.
cats do, and people
Yeah.
still freak out when Trump does all the things that he's done forever.
Yeah.
It's so, uh,
And that's where like the TDS people are, crazy with that because first of all, I personally, I don't vote for people. I vote for policies, right? And part of I think the disenfranchisement in our country is in this team politics is that people like there's so much team politics. They're voting for people, um, and so then when they're disappointed or when you're judging people on their behavior, like Trump, right? So it creates all this TDS uh, on both sides, or on the flip side, the devotees can't kind of properly evaluate when hey, maybe this isn't going as well as we thought. But if if our voters aren't voting based on policy, right, it's really easy to not have to carry through and on policy, right?
yeah. I mean, but let's face it, our primaries are very, very powerful.
Yes.
And, here in Colorado, I voted in the Democratic primary. I'm a registered independent. I voted in the Democratic primary because whichever one of the two Democrats won the primary, they're going to be the next governor.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say who the next governor is.
Yeah.
And, um, which I think when you look at primary turnout, I think the I'm still waiting. I'm on the record as being concerned about DSA and that their ideas are dangerous and they
I,
need to be shut down politically. The
yeah.
Democrats need to condemn them. But all that being said, this DSA surge has all been in primaries, uh, and they experienced some setbacks yesterday, particularly in Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I'm more let's wait till November and let's see how they
Okay.
do after the general elections in November before I feel like a month ago, Kelly, I was giving them a little too much
It's interesting.
credit. I was fearing them a little bit too much, a little, you know, you play one good game, it doesn't mean you're going in the Hall of Fame. So they had
Yeah.
some success in New York with some congressional primaries, and they've had some successes in other parts of the country. But
See, here in New York, though, excuse me, they're in our state legislature,
mhm.
right? And they impact it, even if they don't, even if they don't control it or stop legislation or write it, they still impact what happens, and they're very loud and they're very vocal, and their members are incredibly active, right?
Right,
And
but how much worse do they make things than they already are?
well,
In
in New
in a
York,
place like New York, like
well,
you can't get much worse than it already is from in so
so
many different ways of
but
looking at it.
they drove part of this climate, right? They were a big driver behind that climate and energy. Um, and we have a particularly weak governor. So right now they're having like an outsize um, because they're so vocal and they're so loud. And she doesn't want to lose this upcoming election. She didn't want to be primaried, Hochul. So
Well, your
she
your
was
governor is, yeah,
she's
she's
yeah, she's particularly weak. So and she was deathly afraid of being primaried and losing this. So they were loud. So she just made a deal with the devil all the time, right? She heard a lot of what they have to say. It and I agree. I think they're dangerous. What I personally think is kind of dangerous. One is most people actually don't read what their policies are, right? And I watched this fascinating um, interview with the DSA insider, and he had been in the DSA since like 2013, but he recently left. And he said between 2013 and 2021, the average age of the DSA member went from 68 to 33. 68 to 33. And the organization, and this is all really kind of started to accelerate in the last few years, and they were true democratic socialists. They were like the Scandinavian model, right? They never said we want pure socialism. It was just more socialized medicine and whatnot. And but now it's 30. It's down to 33. It's primarily white kids. It's like 85% white that are over credentials, downwardly mobile, and the academia he's claiming the organization has been infiltrated by Marxist Leninists, specifically from academia, and they pushed out anybody. Basically, this was his words that concerned me. He said, "Anybody that remembered the 20th century is now gone." Right. So he said it's an organization that is completely different than it was maybe 5 years ago. But to your point, they got to get. Let's see what happens in November.
well, and also I'm very leery of some of these numbers when it comes to the demographics of the DSA. So I think first off, if those numbers are accurate that you stated as far as their average age, good. The younger they are, the less likely they are to vote. Um, Also, one thing that fascinates me is when it comes to DSA is that except for the guy in Michigan, I guess he has somewhat of an accomplished resume. Most of them really haven't had a job in their life.
No,
At
they're
least the
from
people running for office.
yeah, they're from in this. I'll post the link to the article. His name is Jake Altman. He did it through Free Press in the comments here, but he basically said these are kids that grew up pretty privileged, right? Wealthy parents, went to good schools, overly credentialed, and downwardly mobile. Basically, they're looking and they're like, "Whoa, I." Maybe like one of them, for example, and it's with Mondami. It's one of his advisors. She's on rent strike and has been on rent strike in New York City. She grew up in like multi-million-dollar homes. Her dad's some big shot music producer or something. Um, and she's publicly been bragging about not paying rent. Um, but she grew up attending the Grammys. So
Right.
again,
Wait,
um,
you didn't go to the Grammys growing up?
no, I didn't. I'm such a loser, right? Such a loser. Um, and and he just his warning, and again, I recommend everyone watch it. Was and the not so much. He's like these people. They're in a certain to a certain extent, nothing gets done because it's just democracy. They all vote on everything, right? So trying to watch these kids in the room get stuff done when right they're all voting and they're all point of privilege, right? No, please no clapping because it hurts my. It's overstimulating me, right? Just kind of the
Right.
madness. Um, but what he said is that his concern was that the Democratic Party, the leadership there, has no idea what they're up against. And there are some very, very motivated and influential members of the DSA leadership that are true. They come from academia and they are true Marxist Leninists, and their goal is to get up to to infiltrate the Democratic Party.
So this is going to sound conceited as hell, but I'm going to say it
Okay,
anyway.
let's see it.
Uh, there is such a large part of the country that when people talk about Chicago, California, New York, Massachusetts, we're just like, who gives a shit?
Oh, I know, right? New
Yeah, I
York, yeah,
mean,
totally.
it's I mean,
No,
I've lived in DC. I've been
yeah,
in the East Coast world, but I mean, I grew up in the Midwest and I live in Colorado now. And I'm not,
yeah,
but it's just kind of like um when I hear like California problems, I just roll my eyes kind of. I'm like,
well,
well, shit, you guys voted
because
for him. But then
yeah,
again, on the flip side, you feel bad because like there's California has the largest percentage of Republicans and they
I'm
basically have no voice.
here in New York,
Massachusetts is like 40% Republican. They have no representation in
yeah,
Congress whatsoever.
or even
So
independence, yeah.
yeah, and so you do so then I feel bad kind of saying something like that. But like, oh my God, I'll tell you what, Gavin Newsom, at least at least at least he looks the part and at least he can speak.
Yes.
Hochul Hochul
Oh,
looks like the runt of the litter.
she
He's
does. They call her
constantly
Bucktooth.
scared. I'm
Yeah,
surprised she's not trembling every time
she
it's
basically
just
is.
yeah. I mean, it's just she is got to be one of the worst
Yes.
governors from just like optics.
It,
She's the
yeah, it's just,
makeup, the
yeah,
voice,
her face, the,
she's scared of
the,
everybody.
the way she interacts. Exactly. So she is scared of everyone. And so they've really put the screws to her because she's so
Why wouldn't you?
deathly.
I'd
Yeah, exactly.
I'd run
I
her
mean,
ass over too if I
I
was.
don't, yeah, I don't blame them. She's just, and it's like, she's so wildly unpopular. Right. And, and, and I, it'll be interesting coming up this upcoming election because again, it's like these self-created problem, right? um this climate and that drove, we've talked about this, has driven up the energy cost just exponentially, right? Doubling, tripling. And so the party that put that in has now made themselves very unpopular. Right.
Certainly, but I mean, for so much of all of this for me, Hochul, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they are so representative of the problem with Democratic Party leadership. Not that Hochul is in charge of the party. I know she's
No, no,
not,
but she's a
but
New York Democrat, so
right,
establishment Democrat.
but she's clearly scared of the left flank of the party and the
Yes.
DSA folks. Whereas I'll give, I do see to some extent, I sympathize with my friends who are Democrats to the extent that, well, at least you have some piss and vinegar in guys like J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom that
Yeah.
don't come off as being scared.
Yes.
Whereas certainly Schumer comes off that way. Hakeem Jeffries, I feel like Hakeem Jeffries is just a robot and he's he's just
Yeah.
reading whatever he's programmed to say that.
So that's where this take he's suggesting. He's like, these people are vulnerable, right? To maybe I'm actually breaking some news here. Or it might be Caroline Levitt is just resigned.
Oh,
Or was uh it was announced that President Trump announced it that this is just yeah, she's resigning. So seeing it's just kind of briefly glancing here, seems like maybe time or she just had her second child and whatnot. Yeah, she wants to spend time with her family.
well, yeah, and it's that
Yeah,
time too.
understandable. Yeah,
Coming up on the midterms, a lot of people only serve their
yeah,
2 years
yeah,
in the administration. So
yeah. But so but so this Jake Allman's suggestion. And there's a couple of progressives that have come out recently and kind of broke into the story is that there are some vulnerable places, right? And New York, this New York establishment Democrats have an incredibly oversized impact and say on politics in America, right? It drives me nuts because they're just terrible policies. But this particular group that's currently in our leadership seems so vulnerable to me. And I'm still, well, I take your point about the DSA. Let's see what happens, to November. Clearly, they're over polling. Um, I guess maybe some of my concern more is that I'm not sure the Democratic Party knows what they've got on their hands,
Oh, I
and
agree with that.
and so my concern kind of lies more in that they don't even know they can't even seem to you know they they can't even address what their own issues are, right? So are they capable of fighting off some of these uh, you know some of these more aggressive people and leaders, especially when they're weak and they're so worried about maintaining their own jobs.
Well, yeah, and you brought up an interesting point about New York's disproportionate impact on America, New York politics, particularly the
Yeah.
Democratic politics. I've wondered, and your insightful comment kind of triggered this in my head, if Democratic leadership in the House and the Senate, if they wouldn't be better served with at least one of them not
Not
being a coastal Democrat, being
yeah.
somebody from the Midwest or the South or Texas. Um, I, to me, it feels like forever since the Democrats have had leadership that wasn't from the West Coast or the East Coast in Congress. And
And I just real quick, I see it. It's coast, but it's also urban versus
yes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Nobody from Myrtle Beach is going to be. Yeah, yeah. It's urban. It's the Northeast. It's L.A. It's San Francisco.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
and
Chicago Democrats. They're in the middle of the country, but we
yeah,
we don't want them.
I mean, it seems like
But to your
forever
point,
since like Tom Daschle. He was a
yeah.
senator from South Dakota, and he was a reasonable, sensible guy in many ways. Um, and it just strikes me that again, I could be wrong. My memory has been known to be wrong or
No.
erroneous. But I feel like it's just been forever. Pelosi was in charge forever.
Yeah.
Schumer's been there for a long time.
Yeah. No, you're 100%, you're 100% right. We've got to get um we've got to get people out of these coastal big cities because the voters in these urban areas aren't always, they're not a significant portion, don't own homes. They may vote differently,
It's a great
right?
point about home ownership.
Yeah. And so, yeah, right. Let's tax, easy to tax them, right? Make legislation against landlords. Whereas even if you're not totally rural, more of a suburban. Uh, and I hate to make it a homeowner versus not homeowner because I think that divide gets somewhat exploited. But those they vote differently. Those two group segments vote differently. They act differently. Their
Certainly.
priorities are different, right? Um,
They
just
do.
the way,
And it's not just congressional leadership when you talk about um, the future of the Democratic Party, Gavin Newsom, JB Pritzker, um, AOC, and I'm just using them, Governor Shapiro, Governor Brashear. Like you're talking, um, Brashear is about as interesting as watching paint dry. Which is unfortunate because if you took a dynamic person in the
yeah,
Democratic Party and put him in a place as, put him as governor of Kentucky, you might have a great combination.
yeah.
Um,
A,
and
a
so,
Yeah, Shapiro, right? You brought him up, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, again, but like I know for me, like Pennsylvania, that's definitely the East Coast to me.
Okay.
Um, when I think about um, that state, I don't think I'm alone in that thought. But when you look at, for example, Bill Clinton, Mark Halperin talked about it on his Next Up, talking about the internal fight in the Democratic Party um, in his most recent episode, which I watched earlier today, and that the Clintons grew up as Democrats in Arkansas. So they were very understanding of the left and the right flank of their party, and that
Yeah.
you just cannot go crazy left. And they
Yeah.
grew up that way. Bill Clinton became governor of Arkansas. And when you grow up that way, you're you cut your political teeth, if you will, in a state like Arkansas as a Democrat. That never leaves you, and
Yes.
that stayed with the Clintons um,
Especially Bill
to this
Clinton,
day. Yeah, especially
right?
Bill.
He was
And Mark
very
used a
moderate.
clip from Hillary, and she was uh, very astute in her analysis of what the Republicans are calling DSA folks, calling them communists, and she said, they're doing that. I'm sure they've tested it and it works because Trump's saying it, Vance is saying it,
Yeah.
and
I mean, if you
um,
read their platform,
you're
they
right,
it's I mean, they want to literally we're talking about um taking housing for all. You won't this idea of home ownership does won't exist.
right, and
Housing will be a free, right? It'll
but
be a public good.
also, and I'm kind of coming more into this line of thought is I do think DSA is dangerous. I think they are. You have to respect them that they are trying to do something. Um, as we say in the military and warfare, the enemy gets a vote. And so I think they need to be stopped. But that being said, I'm not as concerned about them now as I was even 6 weeks ago. But all that being said, if I was a Democrat, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with this now than after November, a year from now, 2 years from now. You got to nip this in the bud.
Yeah.
And um,
Yeah.
and the Democrats have done that in the past.
Okay, Bernie.
Like they got no problem getting rid of people that
Yeah.
are running for office that they don't like. So um,
Yeah, I guess
we'll see.
my concern with DSA was not so much yeah, they get elected, right? There's only so many of them. It's hard to kind of get much done. Although you could argue that Francesca Hong, uh, I don't know if she ever answered this question, and this was something that blew my mind. Her and she was one of six, uh, is six people in the Wisconsin legislature um, to to vote against a bipartisan bill, criminal like making it a felony to groom and seduce minors for the purpose of sexual abuse. Like they're finding on Wisconsin didn't have a law in the books for like people stalking or going online
Hmm.
creating um, and so her and five other people again from the far left they objected to it because the word grooming um, it's it like blew my mind. How could somebody get that far and not have to answer the question of
Well,
why you voted against that?
so
And
I mean, I do think that people underestimate those social issues. I think Democrats underestimate the importance of those social issues to a lot of American voters.
yeah, and, and so my concern kind of with the DSA is um, that platform. The DSA itself is changing so quickly, and we have such a large group of disenfranchised, overly credentialed, downwardly mobile uh, college grads or what that can't get a job, owe a lot of money, right? And it's I mean, it's populism, right? But how will they latch on to that? And they're very they're very active. And I'm not sure the establishment Democratic Party is able to control them and stop them or realizes what they have on their hands. And if they're going to keep pushing the party farther and farther away, um, is the DNC going to be able to handle it? That's kind of, I guess, more my broader concern. But I guess that's up for us to see, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you take a look at the DSA again, like 5, 6 weeks ago, I was more concerned about them than I am now.
Yeah,
I kind of look at the primary season coming up to midterm elections like a baseball season,
yeah,
and my concern about DSA would be like, okay, well, this team's off to a hot start, but it's the middle
yeah,
of May. Let's get back to me in August, and I
yeah.
guess I wasn't as measured. My concern about DSA in previous episodes, like I said, like probably 5, 6 weeks ago, um, I'm not I'm not as concerned as I was. I still think that it's a horrible idea that the Democratic Party needs to tamp down and deal with and get rid of from whether you like it or not as a Democrat, they're running with you
Yeah,
under your political party,
yeah,
and the Democrats are politically savvy enough, and even though they're not the best shape financially, if they want to get rid of somebody, they can.
yeah.
And um and I
So
hope
it
they
will be.
do. I don't
Yeah.
I'm not a person obviously I lean conservative. I'm not a person that would have wanted someone like Miss Hong to be the nominee for governor just because it the Republicans can use it to their advantage in
Yeah.
campaign ads and fundraising because even though I'm an Iowan and we have a natural rivalry with Wisconsin, I care about Wisconsin. I have friends
Yeah.
that live in Wisconsin and I don't want the state to go down the drain. And so,
No, we shouldn't want any of our fellow states or
no,
areas to, yeah.
no,
And,
certainly
and
not. But at the same time, it's easy to have more sympathy for certain parts of the country. At least it is
oh,
for me.
totally.
Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, in places where it's like here in New York, although I'm in Canada right now, um, it's like I feel like my concerns don't even matter, right? Uh, as I have concerns about the education system here in New York. And again, this aggressive environmental law. And I'm all for, renewables and everything, but it was so aggressive and the technology wasn't in place. Now, and you shut down nuclear before everything was ready. Now we've created ourselves a big problem, the data center moratorium. And it's, it, it's hard, you're not really motivated to do too much because your vote doesn't really count. But that in and of itself is a serious issue with the conservatives and the Republicans in New York. They've got to address that mentality head on if they're going to have a chance here in this next gubernatorial election and just even the local like state assembly people. And they're just as much as we say Kathy Hochul is terrible and weak, the New York State Republican Party and conservative parties, like here in New York, you have Democrats and working families, and then conservative and Republican, um, and ballot access is an issue in New York. They're also just sloppy, can't get it together,
Right.
right? So it's it will be interesting, I think, as we come up. But to your point, maybe we do. We got to wait till November.
It's not going to be dull, that's for sure, between now and election day in November. And
No,
um,
and it kind of as we wrap up here, I want to get your take on: do you think the betting markets are like the Wisconsin polls? And I think we do have some, or like the Wisconsin polls, they were clearly so off. Do you think the betting markets are impacting that, or is it just bad polling, like the bad polling we've been seeing for the last decades?
well, I got to tell you, as a proud graduate of the University of Iowa, uh,
Miss,
political polling classes bored me to death when I was in college. But I'm going to at least say here, this was tweeted out earlier today. 88% reporting
They were
The worst
awful.
lead that Hong had over Mr. Crowley, he was plus 18, and the state Navigate poll had her at plus 29.
Yeah,
And
just
at
awful.
88%, she was at plus zero point 0.5. So um, I'm very much of the mindset that everything that's going on here with these polling numbers uh, is a huge, huge um, problem for both political parties. And I am baffled with a capital B. I am baffled at how both political parties dump so much money into these polling operations. How many election cycles do we have to go through before
Right?
some of these people? I get it. They're all friends. They grease each other's pockets
Yeah.
left and right.
They
They're
all get cuts.
Yeah, they all get
Yeah.
cuts. I'm going to leave this and go into the government for 2 years and come back, and it's a cycle
Yeah.
of making money and doing the things. But my God, I can't believe, Kelly, I cannot believe that so many people on television with a straight face quote polls.
Yeah. Well, I remember Ann
Like
Seltzer's poll. It came out right before.
people took it like it
Yeah.
was.
But she okay, at one point I believe she said, I stand corrected if I'm wrong, but they're still calling landlines. I'm like, what? Was that's why your poll is so terrible, right?
Well, I mean, and
But it's
like
just
you, it, to me, it's kind of crazy that you have such a, I would say, political polling. When I was in college, I was at the University of Iowa. I was a political science and history major. When I was in college, um, that was 1992 to 1996.
okay.
And political polling back then, I would say, was a World War II fighter plane. Okay. Piston
Okay.
engine P
Yeah.
51. It's not supersonic. It's not a jet engine. It doesn't carry sophisticated missiles or laser guided bombs. And I would say political polling now, uh, in the, you know, almost 40 years, I would say political polling is like um, a Korean War fighter aircraft. It's jet engine. It's not quite supersonic. It carries rockets,
Yeah.
but uh, it's not. It's in 1992. The Air Force was flying. It doesn't fly anything remotely like it does
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And that's the government buying things and advancing things. So political polling has advanced so slowly. And
Mm-hmm.
because there's no incentive, why would you try to work harder and get on the cutting edge of something when the people paying you the money to do these polls don't demand that?
Yeah. They want like them. I don't know who was funding all those polls, but and I don't even understand how these companies still exist, right? I
Well, and
like,
furthermore, what is up with internal polling? Well, this Gallup says this, but the Democrats' internal polling reflects says much worse. It's like, what are you paying for?
yeah, what's different? Why
What's
aren't you just
different?
using? Why don't we just use that poll?
Yeah, why
Whatever
would
one's the
the
best, right?
yeah, I
Like,
think there's polling for what can be consumed by the public to shape a narrative
yes,
for an election. And then there's the, hey, listen, this is no shit. This is the emperor without their clothes on.
yeah, and are the betting markets now just a further?
Yeah,
Uh, are they just like exponential version of um, polling to impact? We already have an idea of what we want to happen, right?
yeah, I
To
kind of
get
ignored your
people,
question. And I don't know how the prediction markets are going to work with,
yeah,
I do believe that if you answer a survey via text or one of those people that still has a landline or whatever the case may be, um, you you're not as you're the
yeah,
you're the
you're
chicken at
not betting,
breakfast. You're
yeah,
the chicken at breakfast.
yeah,
If you're in a prediction market, you're the pig at breakfast. You're really
yes,
invested. And if you're
yeah,
willing to put your money behind a position in a in a
Yeah,
political in an election, so be it. I
I
think they
will.
might reflect more. The problem with those is that like I can, as a citizen in Colorado, I can bet on the New York governor's race.
Well,
I'm
and
not
I was
voting in it.
thinking more of like, are the voters looking at them, right? How is it impacting? Like, if your average voter sitting there, it's like maybe it's like 6 o'clock at night. Like, do I go? Do I go vote? Right?
If you could,
Are they just like the next generation of those polls are so it's like do I go vote? And it's like, well, we got the prediction market saying 99% for that person. No.
I'd love it if, so it's obviously not legal in every state, but I would love it if mixed markets, if you could, for example, I have no idea, for example, like in uh, Michigan, uh, I believe it's legal in Michigan to have these prediction markets to place wagers on it. I would love to know just the Michigan residents who are putting their money
Yes.
on it to break it
Yes.
out between Rogers and Dr. El Said and
Yeah.
see that breakout. But
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, well, yeah, you're right, because I don't think the average voter is, is betting on those. It's
probably not.
outside money. Yeah. So, well, we shall see, and we will look forward. Are you ready to make a prediction about Wisconsin or I'm sorry, Michigan?
Oh boy. Um, I I still think that Rogers will pull it out. I don't even know what the latest polling is, but one thing that I would remind every one of our viewers is how much more money the Republicans have than
Yes.
Democrats, and that political advertising and Michigan's a huge state. It's more than just Detroit and Dearborn and Ann Arbor,
Yeah.
and um, I
And the
still think Rogers will
primary,
pull it out.
yeah, and the primaries versus general election. Obviously, there's presidential general elections, but then even just the general statewide elections, the primaries are so different, very different demographic
And
of
in
voters.
fairness to we've been pretty. I feel like we've been uh, going from the top rope against political polling here for the last
Yeah, sorry.
segment of our show, but uh, to prove to everybody that I wasn't completely asleep in my political science polling classes in college, primary polling is far more difficult than general election
Yeah,
polling. Um, and polling is, again, theoretically, it's supposed to be easier when it's
yeah,
a midterm and even more easy when it's a presidential election at the top of the
yeah.
ballot. Um, which again is why I'm surprised
But
that it's been so bad
but
in
the margin of error is not 20 points.
no.
So
And
yeah,
I mean, what was El Said before the election in Michigan over
I
Stevens?
I actually
It was
don't. I don't. Was
it
it
was
significant? I don't.
I mean, he won by 15,000 votes or something. And that
Yeah,
one gal, she got 60,000.
yeah.
That third candidate, I mean,
Right.
he was way further ahead in the polling than the
That
actual,
he won. Yeah,
yeah, than the election. And again, Frank Luntz, he said
I
earlier
loved
today,
that.
yeah, I'm going to bring it up here real quick.
So
I don't
just
want to,
get rid of
yeah,
it.
I don't want to. Frank Luntz this morning he said, I am calling for a total and complete shutdown of primary polling in the Midwestern United States until we can figure out what the hell is going on.
Right. Until we can see what it absolutely is happening. So
So,
I
yeah,
don't
it's
blame
wild.
them. So all right. Well, on that, folks, next week, maybe we'll tackle another political hot hot button issue like early voting.
Right. Yeah. So you're in Canada. I am taking a few days off, going back to Iowa this weekend. Going to do some bass
Nice.
fishing. I do have a
Nice.
picture of me from my trip to Montana
Let this will
with a
be this
rainbow trout.
we need to close on this.
Yep, they're there. So, yeah, it's summer's almost over, and the season's going. The
Yeah.
political season's heating up, and
Wait, are you posting that?
I posted it on our X account. So,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you
oh,
were going
I'm
to share it here.
sorry.
No. Okay. So everyone, actually, no, this is good. Then they can go to our X account, like,
I
subscribe,
can't.
share. No, our viewers. Our
Yeah,
viewers can check it out on
yeah.
our X account and just like on X, subscribe, share, and comment here on our YouTube.
Awesome.
And yeah, well, Richard, it was great talking to you again this week.
Hey,
Uh,
are you going to get some poutine this weekend?
I don't know.
Or
You know what? Maybe I'll. I actually spend a significant amount of time here in the summer, but you know what? Maybe this weekend I'll get
is
some
that
poutine.
Canada's most famous food?
Basically, French fries,
Okay.
gravy, cheese
Well,
curds.
there's got to be,
So
I mean, you're up there on the water.
Canadian bacon.
There's
Oh
got to
yeah,
be some
there
good
is.
seafood
Yeah,
too. Like,
yeah. Lake Erie perch.
oh, okay.
Yeah, they're tiny, tiny little fillets. So
Oh,
yeah,
I love seafood. So that sounds pretty good.
yeah,
So
and Canadian bacon.
I had Canadian bacon on homemade pizza last night. So
The Canadian bacon up here is a little different than the Canadian bacon in America. It's pea meal bacon up here. I'll get some pictures for next time, or I'll share
I was going to say that sounds like a whole new conversation.
them. Yeah,
So
it does.
with, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll tackle Canadian cuisine on another
in
episode.
another episode. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Kelly. Have a great
Okay,
weekend.
you too. Bye.